Welcome back to Timer Bowling Video Ball Reviews. Today we have the Hammer Redemption Hybrid. If you like what we do, don't forget to subscribe, hit the notifications button, check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon. I want to thank Limerick Bowl for their support. If you're in the area, don't forget to visit Limerick Bowl in Limerick, Pennsylvania. A big thank you to Jeff Miller and Ron Hoppy. Don't forget to check out Haley's Pro Shop in Burlington, Washington for world-class drilling and coaching. We tested on a typical house shot and the Kegel Arsenic pattern. First impressions, I've used this term before, but it's apropos here. The Redemption Hybrid is the Goldilocks of the line in my opinion. Okay, let's jump in. Hammer releases its latest high-end piece. Straight out of the gate, both James and I were impressed by what we saw. It's definitely a strong ball, so you won't mistake it for a simple midline skid flip piece. However, whereas the Redemption Solid and Pearl felt very forward, this one surprisingly has a quite different feel. The previous balls really stood up, rolled forward at the end of the pattern, feeling like they weren't gonna like a lot of angle. So they felt more about control. It's not a bad thing, but I will say the Hammer Redemption Hybrid doesn't feel exactly the same. It just kind of feels like a ball from a slightly different line. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't an issue in terms of control per se, but it didn't have that aggressive, sort of setting motion at the end of the pattern. This one kept going. It just had a little rounder shape down lane. Again, you're not going to mistake this for a symmetric per se, but this hybrid is very continuous and felt extremely reliable. And James took to it right away, and it was fun to shoot. He seemed to have a relatively even amount of room, miss room left and right. It's still heavy rolling, so you don't want to throw it out the window. But he did get it to return, even if, say, carry wasn't spectacular from misses outside. Misses in held within reason, but it is an angular ball, so it is going to take off if you miss too far in. So ultimately, the ball's moderate angularity gives you an idea of where you might have miss room and when you can kiss it goodbye. James chased in as well as tested the outside. The ball looked good, even from deep. He kept the break point in a touch from that, from really deep to avoid bleeding too much energy. He also tested the lower axis rotation, more direct shot. You could see the end over end roll of the ball. It's not James' go-to type of shot, but hopefully it helps you visualize what it might look like if you're more apt to play that style and part of the lane. The ball does seem to stand up hard still, and you can see some of the heavy rolling forward nature, especially when James plays it that direct. For the sport shot, James tested the Redemption Hybrid on the very tricky and flat Kegel Arsenic pattern. Flat patterns always require you to watch your angles very carefully and keep chasing so that you can fall back to any spot you create down lane. Otherwise, it's a nightmare. And this was fresh for our test session, but you see that the ball looks great playing the fallback shot. He's playing about 20 to 9, and the ball definitely has plenty of heavy arc to drive through the pins nicely. You'll see how tricky this pattern can be with misses. Though I will say, for this pattern, he had a very good look with the Redemption Hybrid. This is just execution, and the ball had the correct motion, so it was more than playable. Final thoughts, the Hammer Redemption Hybrid was impressive and scores pretty well, say B+. It has some limitations, but certainly the most versatile Redemption line ball in my opinion. It fits in the mid-defined category nicely. If you're a Hammer fan, this is definitely the Goldilocks in their top line.